Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the September 19th, 2013 City Council meeting to order. Cindy, roll call, please.
Thank you. Mayor Turley, Gary Berbetto.
Here.
Bob Carlson.
Here.
Carol Harvey. Here. Ken Matthews.
Here.
John Schaefer. Here. Eric Smith.
Here.
Thank you.
Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, we have a couple items under ceremonies, presentations, and appointments. And the first one, I'd like to ask Jed Bowman, our superintendent for the Woodland Park School District, to please come forward.
And Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, as the superintendent is making his way, I'd like to call the council's attention to the beautiful artwork over his shoulder. On Monday, Gateway Elementary School, and the principal, Kaylin, is with us this evening, hosted Citizenship Day. And they invited numerous folks to attend, to include firefighters, first responders, city officials, etc. The mayor and I and other members of staff, to include some of our police officers, were there. And third graders presented us with this poster. Of course, Elevate, the city logo, along with Elevate Your Education. But they had some very specific things about the city. We feel safe here. We love our farmers market, and my eyes aren't as good as they used to be. We love our roads. They just had some, we love our parks. They just had some fun things like that. So we thought we'd hang it up and display it to the community, because it is a good partnership that we have with the school district. So, Kaylin, thanks for the invitation, and thanks to those little munchkins who created that artwork.
Thanks for coming.
Jed, welcome. Good
Thank
to see you
you,
this evening.
Council members. It's an honor to be in front of you this evening, and I appreciate the time, and I'll try to make this brief. I do not have a formal presentation. I'm going to talk from my heart. After Sandy Hook happened last, I don't even know the month, I'm sorry, December, it was in the winter.
Yes.
Our honorable mayor asked to meet to go over our safety and security plans for our school district. And so we assembled a team of people, and we had the city manager, the mayor, our school resource officer, some of our staff members who are on school safety. And we just talked over what we have in place and what we do and what would happen if we were to have an unfortunate tragedy like in Sandy Hook. And so we, one of the things that was encouraging is we went over our plans, and we do have plans. But what surfaced at that meeting was we all agreed that we had an additional need for more support in our schools around safety and security. And what we were talking about at that point in time, and our meeting was in February-ish, was that an additional school resource officer would be a great addition to help ensure safety in our schools. So that's when the conversation started, and at the time, the city manager and the mayor were there, and the timing wasn't right for the city to be a partner in anything with that. And as you're getting ready and kind of, I believe, in the middle of a budget cycle, it seems like the timing is right now in conversations with the city manager to make the council aware. And what I would like to ask you tonight is just for consideration that we can continue the conversation and maybe come back to the council with a more formal plan in a future meeting. But one of the things that's really important is that we include folks early on in conversations and not at the end of conversations. And so as the conversation has progressed in our school district, it's no secret that we've cut a lot of money out of our system in the last 4 years to the tune of $5.2 million. What we do have is we get occasional one-time monies that show up that are really, I want to say they're nice surprises, because they are. We get some reimbursements occasionally that are unexpected. We can't budget for those. So what we have right now is we have a little bit of one-time money that we could put towards the startup costs of an SRO, and we don't have the ongoing funds to sustain a total cost, but we're at a good position right now also where we could help offset a one-time some of the startup things that go with an SRO. And what I would like to propose without a formal proposal is that we're not looking for the city to pay the entire cost in perpetuity. What I would like to propose is that the school district phase in over a 2 or a 3 year period at least minimally half the cost of an additional SRO. And my belief is that when we start getting more financially healthy, that we should pay the full cost of one SRO and would gladly still accept the city paying the full cost of an SRO like they do today. So for the new council members, one of the things that we did 2 years ago that our school district hadn't done is we actually have been contributing $8,000 a year to help out with the SRO program. And my belief is that we shouldn't be receiving that service entirely free, and I know it's mutually benefiting. And some of the things about the SRO program, the school resource officer, we always talk in acronyms, so school resource officer, is they provide the police service, but more importantly, the SRO also is involved at the Drug and Alcohol Resistance Education Program, and DARE, in our schools, in not only the Woodland Park schools, but also my understanding is at Colorado Springs Christian School as well. And so what's happening over time, and especially the last couple of years, the SROs are continually getting pulled from being able to do their DARE classes. So they get scheduled, they go to the DARE class, and I'm not trying to put Sean or Ryan on the spot. I know they're in the room. When their phone rings, when they get the buzz, they have to pay attention to that. And so what happens a lot of time, they'll be in the middle of a great lesson, helping our 5th graders, teaching them the nice refusal skills and understanding and building the great positive relationship with our police and our students, and then they leave. And then they come back and have to reschedule. And it seems to be happening more frequently than it used to happen. And so I don't want to go on long. We agreed as a group that there was a need. We still believe that there's a need. We would like to just get your permission to continue a conversation with staff, and so that we can maybe come back with a more formal plan. But I wanted to give you just a little bit of background tonight.
Did you have something?
No, I have nothing to add at this time. I'm happy to answer questions that you may have for me, or you can certainly talk to Dr. Bowman as well.
Any questions, Gary?
Is that the SRO we have right now? Is that a full-time position? Or,
Yes.
But they do have to respond to other emergencies outside the SRO.
Yes.
Is there a reason for that? I mean, if you got him dedicated as an SRO, because he got 4 schools here, why isn't he dedicated to 4 schools and take them off that alert status?
Well, I'll take care of that one, because this police officer is still part of our police department.
Sure.
Their primary duty, unless there's an emergency, is at the school. But just as we have officers who may be doing other work, if there's an emergency, they respond. So this officer does that as well. This is almost an additional duty, but it's their primary additional duty. So they still have a responsibility to respond to emergencies. It would be wonderful if we could dedicate them full-time to the school and not pull them out. But I think you're aware we have 18 uniformed officers. There's 2 of them right there. One of them is an SRO. So when you think about shift work and vacations and things like that, we are at the kind of the optimum level for resourcing. So we can't allow the SRO not to respond to an emergency.
Well, I don't know. If one of our responsibilities, if it's not maintaining the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Woodland Park, certainly the youth of Woodland Park, fits that category. I don't understand why we just don't have a full-time position.
Well, if we had an office, that's a council resource issue. I mean, as we are working through this, and as our budget becomes healthier, that's part of what some of this discussion is. If there are 2 that are assigned to the 4 schools plus CSCS, there's a greater opportunity that one could remain with the school. If an officer has pulled someone over for a speeding ticket and there's an emergency, they cease work on the speeding ticket and respond to the emergency. So the same thing happens in the schools.
Well, as I understand it, the resource officer has an advantage being in the schools because he can tap the knowledge base of the students. I mean, they should feel comfortable enough, I would think, to talk to the resource officer, because a lot of things that could have prevented that catastrophe was having prior knowledge of what was going on. The only way you can find out what's going on and being there. I mean, I teach at the school every once in a while, and I get a wealth of knowledge every time I go in there about what's happening.
Yeah, the relationship component of starting young with our students is absolutely invaluable, irreplaceable, and we see that all the time. And building that relationship is critical and vital. And if we can improve that even more, and it would be great to actually have 4. But if we can start small and grow bigger, I think that would be a great way to go. And just the relationship is critical.
Where I'm coming from, I'd like to see a dedicated force of at least 2 guys there that are dedicated to that.
Okay.
Well, I think that's the discussion tonight is.
I mean, dedicated to it. I mean, I'm not pulled off, but dedicated.
I think the purpose tonight is to kind of get the message rolling, not necessarily to debate the issue tonight, but to see if we, as a council, as we step through the budgeting process, want to allocate monies towards this. Bob?
Well, I want to thank you for the heads up, too, and I have no difficulty with including this issue as one of the items that we discussed in the budget cycle. I appreciate that you have some skin in the game, that this isn't going to be a long-term thing. You are suffering some budget problem, with the property values having gone down over the last few years. Now they're on their way back up. So we're anticipating that, you will get well in the not-too-distant future.
Right.
But certainly, I have no difficulty including this. I mean, we can talk about the issue that Gary has brought up, and certainly, in a sense, you'll have to justify it. But to me, I agree with Gary that knowing the kids, as opposed to, in a sense, protecting the school from outside forces, which you can't do, is the primary function there, is just getting to know the kids.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's the cost of a total cost of a resource?
Depending on
total cost.
About $60,000 for an officer.
Yeah.
For an officer and the entire benefits package.
Yeah.
There's about a $6,000 startup for training and uniforms and equipment.
That's something
and that's
that
what the
Jim
school
was talking
district
about,
was
yeah.
prepared to pay for. And then they're putting together a process or a concept for what would look like for the next couple of years, but about $60,000. The chief did have an operational point that he wanted to make with the council.
There's a couple of things that affect our scheduling. One of them is court. We have district court, county court, juvenile court, city court, and then we have a variety of administrative hearings. They're in 4 different cities. They don't coordinate their schedules in any way. In addition to that, if an officer on midnights is going to go to court in the middle of the day, that officer isn't going to work midnights tonight, so we have to pull an officer off another shift or off days off. We have about 25 subjects that the various courts and regulatory agencies require us to train people on a year. Some of those are once a year, some of them are twice a year, some of them are 12 times a year, and I can keep going for a while. But you don't get the effectiveness out of a person in terms of availability for work that you do in a job where the person simply goes to work and does their work and then goes home. We also have to maintain certain relationships with other agencies if we want to get help from those other agencies and participate in a variety of different investigative groups. So it really reduces the availability of people on a regular basis.
Well, something like this, I look at, I mean, I don't want to cause a debate or anything, obviously, but I think this is an important issue, and I think it requires a dedicated staff, not one that would be pulled off, but that guy's there.
Every department in the country that does it pulls them off.
Well, and maybe we should be different.
Well,
Well, and again, we're not debating it tonight.
No, I'm just saying, but
We're just wanting to bring the concept to you and allow, I would like your permission to work with the superintendent on a plan that we can incorporate into the budget for your consideration.
I think it's our responsibility to provide that safety net.
I understand your point. If I have to respond to a guy to an emergency, I don't send him because I'm in the school.
Yeah.
The city will pay for that for years.
Because I know the taxpayer's going to have to foot the bill, and we're supposed to be, good fiduciaries of the taxpayers' money, and I can't think of a better thing to put our money to is this. I would sacrifice, some money.
Thank you.
But that's it.
I think we understand your feelings. So,
Well, that's good. Let's make it happen.
well, I think maybe there's some other folks that might want to weigh in. Carol?
Except to thank Jed for introducing this topic tonight, and I look forward to discussing it during the budget process. One question I had, though, for David is, do we have a position currently on the staff that is not filled that could be transferred to this duty?
Do we have a position on the staff that could be transferred? No. And again, because it's of the staffing level and the shifts and all the other requirements. We may have an individual who might be interested in the position, but then I would want to backfill. So this would be a request for an additional person.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Well, would this be, if we say in the best of all worlds, we had the ability to do 2 dedicated officers, which would cost us $200,000 a year, would that be something we'd be bringing before the voters to approve?
No, this would be a budget issue, and the council has the responsibility and the authority to approve the budget, to appropriate the funds for that. So no, that rests completely within your purview.
Oh, we'd have to take it out of something else, obviously, balance the budget.
Well, sure. Or you rely on the additional revenue, but that's what you've got me to do. You let me figure that part of it out, and we'll present it to you and see how it works.
If I say, hey, make it happen, it'll happen, right?
No.
It takes 4 of
If
us.
4 of the
It takes
7
4
of you
us.
say make it happen, then maybe we got a deal.
Right. You're 25% of the way there. All right, moving on. If there are no other questions, I think what I heard is that council's interested. I kind of see a lot of heads nodding, and we would like you to work with Jed and with Chief Larson and put some numbers together and present how this might look as we step through the budget process this fall.
We'd be happy to do that.
Great.
Jed?
Thank you very much, Council. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much. All right, moving on. The next item on the agenda, 4B, is to consider an appointment of Stephen Yoxheimer, hopefully I said that correctly,
right.
Yeah.
to the Woodland Park Planning Commission. And for that, we're going to turn to Cindy.
Thank you, Eric. Currently, one term on the Planning Commission that expired at the beginning of this year remained vacant, and we've been advertising for that diligently. Since that time, on August 6th, we received an application from interested citizen Stephen Yoxheimer. Stephen is here. You have received a copy of his application. It's attached to your packet. The term of office for this position will be 3 years, and it will expire January 1st of 2016. Stephen is here and can answer any questions you may have of him. What questions may I answer for the process?
Any questions of staff? Stephen, would you like to come forward and maybe briefly tell us about yourself again? I know you've...
So, as you know,
before.
I'm Stephen Yoxheimer. I live at 1411 Eagle Trace Court here in Woodland Park. Most of you know me. I ran for city council here a few weeks ago and, gave it a valiant effort. But Mr. Ken Matthews came out on top for that one. You guys pretty much have a basic background, based off that. So I really don't have a lot of information more to include with that, but if you have any direct questions related to the position, I can happy to answer those.
I think during our little conversation we had when you were running, you mentioned the fact that you're going to the Navy or something like that. Did that materialize?
Yes, that is something that might happen next year, but there's no certainty on that as of right now. So there's nothing that I can guarantee that might come through or anything like that. That's why I want to dedicate myself to a position as long as I can here. Yes, Mr. Carlson.
Welcome back, and it's great to see you.
It's good to see you too.
And have some young blood into our organizations and various commissions and committees. I did have one question. This last summer, you were volunteering as an intern with the planning department. Being on the planning commission, would you be able to still do that, or what's your plans in that regard?
Yes, me, Sally, and Lisa, we discussed, if there would be like any, what would you call it?
Conflict of interest.
Any conflicts or something like that. So if there's anything on the agenda that they have that might interfere with my position on the planning commission, it's something that I would still be able to work for them, but I can't be involved in the direct process of talking about it inside the office. I would still be able to do activities that would help them out, but nothing that would directly involve those processes.
Great.
And I'm pleased that you're going to still pursue the career in the military, but I encouraged you before to apply for the position, and I'm very grateful that you've done so. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
John?
You seemed a little more certain than you are today that the Navy will find a slot for you next summer. Has something changed since we last talked?
I just still haven't heard anything back. It's one of those timely processes. The military, they offer these things once a year now. So I've talked with them, but it's still one of those things that I still have yet to hear back on.
Any other questions? Stephen, anything else?
Oh, no, sir.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, council, we'll accept the motion.
I move to approve the appointment of Stephen Yoxheimer to the Woodland Park Planning Commission.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to appoint Stephen Yoxheimer to the Planning Commission. Cindy?
Thank you. Brevetto?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Harvey?
Yes.
Matthews?
Yes.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
And Stephen, I guess we're going to have the oath here. And
We will.
I'd like to say welcome. Thank you for wanting to volunteer. And there's several of us here started on Planning Commission, and actually three of us, I think, and got the opportunity to move on to council. So it's a great opportunity to learn. So
I'd like to say thank you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Great. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Stephen Yoxheimer,
I, Stephen Yoxheimer,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the State of Colorado,
and of the State of Colorado,
the Charter and ordinances
the Charter and ordinances
of the City of Woodland Park,
of the City of Woodland Park,
and that I will faithfully perform
and that I will faithfully perform
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of Woodland Park Planning Commissioner,
of a Woodland Park Planning Commissioner,
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank
Let's
you.
get a couple signatures here. And you get the pretty one.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thanks so much for volunteering.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Steve.
thank you. All right, moving along here. Cindy, I don't think we
Yes.
have any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda.
No, sir.
All right, moving on to item number 6, the consent calendar. We have 2 items under the consent calendar this evening. The first is approve the minutes of the September 5th, 2013 regular meeting, and the second is to approve the August statement of expenditures and authorize the mayor to sign the warrants in payment thereof. Any discussion? Is there a motion?
Move to approve as presented.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Cindy?
Thank you. Carlson?
Yes.
Harvey?
Yes.
Matthews?
Yes.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Brevetto?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right. We have no unfinished business this evening. Moving on to item number 8, ordinances on initial posting. We have one item under that title this evening, and that is the consideration of ordinance number 1195 on initial posting, amending several chapters related to flood damage prevention. And to that, we're going to turn to our planning director, Ms. Riley.
Thank you. Since this is a legislative item, and even though it's first reading, I thought that I would take a few minutes to walk you through the ordinance that updates the city's flood damage prevention regulations. This is not due to the recent floods and the increased rain. This is due to a action that took place nearly 3 years ago by the Colorado Water Conservation Board when they adopted higher standards for floodplain management. We have adopted the FEMA regulations in order to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. And within those FEMA regulations, it allows for states to adopt even higher standards. So in order for Woodland Park to stay in line with both FEMA and the state, we are proposing to make primarily 4 major changes to our regulations. So I will walk through the ordinance with you and begin with Section 1 of the ordinance. Adds a few new definitions, one dealing with basement, another with the conditional letter of map revision known as a CLOMAR, the critical facilities definition, and this is a major section that is added to these new regulations, floodproofing, historic structure definition, a letter of map revision, which is also referred to as a LOMAR, a letter of map revision based on fill, a LOMAR F, and then violation. After speaking with our city attorney about this ordinance, it is an ordinance by reference. So in this violation section, we are adopting the requirements of section .60.3 and a lot of subparagraphs. So she recommended that we add this sentence in red, which says that the National Flood Insurance Program regulations are incorporated herein by reference and include the regulations in existence at the time of the promulgation of this ordinance, but exclude later amendments to future editions of the regulations. So I would add that sentence be added to this initial posting this evening. That's the only change I have. Moving on to section 2, the definition for development is tweaked slightly to add or storage of equipment or materials. Section 3 correctly identifies the flood insurance rate map versus being called the flood boundary floodway map. Section 4 of the ordinance adds the revisions to maps based on fill to that section. Section 5, it refers to our study, that the flood insurance study locally. It is not the City of Woodland Park. It is actually the Teller County, Colorado, and Incorporated Areas study. So that corrects the name. Section 6 is where higher standards are being added. And that is dealing with the specific standards for flood proofing. So in the past, if you were building in the flood fringe, within the floodplain, you had to flood proof to what was called the base flood elevation. Now you must flood proof to 1 foot above the base flood elevation. So that gives what they call an additional freeboard or area for the flood to be able to elevate to. So that's section 6. Section 7 is also adding to the standards the 1 foot above. And this is dealing with manufactured homes, that when they are installed within the floodplain, that they are installed so that they are 1 foot above that base flood elevation, as opposed to just at the 100-year storm base flood elevation. Section 8 are the standards that deal with the floodplain fill area. So if you have an area in the floodplain that has been filled, now you must go back to the original base flood elevation and meet those standards within that fill area. So that's what that section deals with. Section 9 is the critical facilities section, and there are 4 classifications of critical facilities. The first classification are essential service facilities. The second one will deal with hazardous materials. The third is at-risk populations. And the fourth are vital to restoring normal services. So these sections, A, the essential services, those are the ones that deal with public safety, like the police station, the fire station, emergency medical, communications, public utility plants, and transportation facilities. Those are the essential services area for critical facilities. The next area are hazardous material facilities. Those are chemical-related facilities or hazardous waste. And in this long paragraph, there is also a reference to the OSHA regulations, so that this does have that same language that I read to you that was in red that talks about the reference of this regulation. Moving along to the at-risk population facilities, those are elder care or nursing homes, and also where children are, either at schools or daycare, and those need to be protected at a higher standard if they're in the floodplain. And lastly are the facilities vital to restoring normal services. Those are such things as City Hall, where public records are kept or court takes place. So the protection of these critical facilities, it requires even more stringent rules that you can see that you must have at least 2 feet above the base flood elevation if these critical facilities are within the floodplain. Moving on to the last section is 10, and this deals with the floodway. And this has to do with if you are building within the floodplain and it impacts the floodway by just a half a foot, then there are specific criteria or studies that need to be done in order to meet the FEMA standards. That's a fairly quick overview of this 7-page ordinance that updates our Title 20 of the Municipal Code. The state gave us 3 years to adopt these new regulations, so they need to be done by January 14th of next year, so we're a few months ahead of schedule. Any questions?
Any questions, Bob?
I realize that we're just coming into compliance with the FEMA and state regulations.
Correct.
But is there like a grandfather clause for existing structures that are impacted? So they wouldn't have to raise their foundations or anything?
These regulations apply to new development and substantially improved development. So if a substantial improvement, which is 50% or greater of the value of the structure, then they would need to meet these regulations. So all the prior construction that has occurred in the floodplain, yes, is grandfathered.
Anyone else? Ken?
Does this mean that the flood insurance cost will go down?
I can't predict the insurance business.
I doubt it.
Probably not.
Anyone else?
Just a question, I guess, for Bill. Do we have the flood map for the city that we could possibly bring for the public hearing on this ordinance?
Well, there's several map panels that cover the entire city. Yes, we have FEMA floodplain maps. None of our critical facilities are currently in special flood hazard areas. The city or the fire department, any of those.
Okay, yeah, that was my question. Really, try to figure out where those most critical areas are.
We've looked at that over time as part of our emergency management too. But the police station, fire station, public works facility are not in designated special flood hazard areas.
Okay.
Bob?
But we're also interested in schools and some of these other type of facilities. But I did understand that we've had in place for some time kind of a prohibition against building in a floodplain. Maybe you could confirm that.
Well, we've had the current FEMA regulations in place since the 1980s. This is just a change to their standards that are a little more stringent. So we've been enforcing those rules and regulations about construction in floodplains, flood areas, floodways, and all that for years.
Okay.
So this really should have very minimal impact to any ongoing projects.
Can we accelerate the vote?
Well, and I guess my one question, and I think I know the answer, but I'll ask it anyway. So for the two projects that are currently ongoing, that this has no impact. I mean, they got clomers, and they'll go through the loamer process, and the floodplain maps will be updated. And
Correct.
okay. Okay. Anything else? All right. Thank you, Sally.
Thank
well
you.
done. Okay. We do need a motion and a vote. Is there a motion?
So moved. To approve ordinance 1195 on its first reading and set the public hearing for October 7th, 2013.
Second.
October 17th.
October 17th, 2013.
All right, great. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Cindy?
Thank you. Harvey?
Yes.
Matthews?
Yes.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Brevetto?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, now we'll move on. So, moving on to item number 9, we have 2 items under public hearings. The first item is to consider ordinance number 1193, amending section 18.09.090 of the municipal code related to retail sales of farm, ranch, lawn, and garden supplies. And to that, we'll turn to Sally.
Thank you. This is also a legislative action. This was initiated by a request from Mr. Ray Hicks, who is here in the audience this evening. If you'll raise your hand, Mr. Hicks. He is the developer of a property that is on Highway 67, and it is to allow for a retail construction or development of a factory tractor supply company retail outlet. This is for outside storage for farm, ranch, lawn, and garden supplies, is to add that to our code, as well as to establish standards for screening of the outdoor storage and standards for display areas on site. We are not here to talk about the development, but I think that in order to put the legislation in a context, it's interesting to look at what the development is being proposed and how our current regulations did not support the tractor supply companies' typical program for their retail, with indoor about 20,000 square feet of indoor supply or retail, and then an outside supply and storage area. This is the subject property, and it is moving forward with a subdivision that the Planning Commission will be hearing next week, and then there will come to the City Council on the 17th of October. The Tractor Supply Company and Mr. Hicks has provided us with a sketch plan for this property so we can evaluate the subdivision and the need for the outdoor supply. And just to briefly walk you through, this is Highway 67, this is Spruce Haven Drive over to Coraline, and this is about a total of 7.2 acres. And it will be split with the larger property to the north and then a smaller property on the southern side. And Big D Motorsports is just to the south here on unimproved Midland Avenue. You can see the footprint of the 20,000 square foot building. The yellow area is what is proposed for the screen outside storage area. The green on this map are what would be the display areas in front of the building for product. And then their parking field in the front and the delivery or back area for truck deliveries and dock. I might mention that the parking, Mr. Hicks was also wanting an amendment to our code for a one space for every 400 square feet of retail space. Right now, retail space generally carries a one space for every 200 square feet. However, we just added a parking amendment or alternate plan that can be reviewed by staff or by Planning Commission and Council when they can provide data that will convince us that 1 to 400 is adequate. And that seems to be what these retail sites are going toward, because they have very high turnover of customers. So that's just an idea about the context of the code amendment or the change in the legislation and how it relates to this development. Because currently our code excludes outside storage of materials under retail sales for farm, ranch, lawn, and garden supplies. It did, with that exclusion of outside storage, allow for a retail building to be sited in all of our districts, our commercial districts, except heavy service commercial and light industrial, but permitted a use by right in neighborhood commercial, community commercial, service commercial, central business district, and permitted conditionally as a PUD. And then in the agricultural zone, it would be a conditional use. So that's how the code currently read, which did not mesh or match what the tractor supply company was hoping to be able to build. So we also looked at a similar use is a lumber or building materials retail sales. And currently in the code, that does allow for outside storage of materials and equipment, but screened from public view by an approved fence or other suitable buffering. And in the lumber yard area, those were listed as conditional uses in the service commercial zone and in the central business district, and permitted conditionally for a PUD. So we took this to the Planning Commission with a work session at first and discussed the similarities with a lumber yard and the need for farm, ranch, garden supply, and lawn supplies to have the ability to put outside storage. And they recommended that the outside storage of materials would be acceptable as long as the equipment and materials are screened from public view by an approved fence or other suitable buffering, and recommend that it not be allowed in the neighborhood commercial zone, because all of you know that neighborhood commercial is really a buffer between central business district and residential. So a retail with outside storage did not make sense in the neighborhood commercial zone. And then have it conditional use in community commercial, service commercial, central business district, and then a permitted use in heavy service light industrial, and still remain a conditional use in the agricultural zone and permitted conditionally in the PUD. However, we also realized that if we were going to look at the outside storage and have it screened from public view with an approved fence, it would be nice to have design standards for that screening added to our code. So we crafted some language for that outside storage area, and I'll read this, that all retail goods stored outside shall be screened by fencing or other suitable buffering, and that other suitable buffering might be a wall, or it might be terrain that allows for the screening. Fencing or buffering for outside storage of retail goods shall be solid, opaque or semi-transparent, and be composed of materials compatible with the architectural design of the principal building. And so there's a lot of leeway there for an owner, a property owner who wants to do outside storage, to be able to propose something suitable but still provide some guidelines that we would like it to be semi-opaque or opaque altogether, a solid fence. And what Tractor Supply Company is interested in doing are these examples with a metal vertical fence that has a fabric on the inside of it that would screen the materials on the inside. And we would require that that fabric be submitted to us so we could see the density of the fabric, the colors of the fabric, and ensure that it would be compatible with the architectural design of the building. And then the last thing we realized was that we had no standards for outside displays of merchandise that many retail stores are interested in putting by their front doors. So we developed some language to add to our design standards for that outdoor display of retail goods, that it shall be limited to the area at the front of the principal building, be placed as near to the principal building as possible, not exceeding beyond 25 feet of any front wall, and not extending beyond 50 feet of any front corner of the principal building, be configured so that the retail goods do not impede pedestrian and handicap access, and not encroach into the parking area. Lastly, we felt it was a good place to put that no vending machines are allowed in the outside. So that is what is contained in the ordinance that you have before you this evening. And we would recommend that you approve Ordinance 1193 after you have a public hearing. And this was also reviewed by the Planning Commission, who voted unanimously to support this approach to the amendments. Questions?
Questions of staff, John?
I have a couple of questions. The drawing you showed, the yellow area was going to be the outside storage area, is that correct?
Yes.
And that fence or buffering would be on all three sides of that?
It would be on all three sides because the fourth side is up against the building.
And one thing I'd like to note, and I think this is a good example, we can use this as an example, but we're not here to discuss this particular application. I think it's a good example, so feel free to utilize it. But you know, this, if depending upon this code change, you know, if it goes forward, you know, this is just one example of what could be many. So, John, you had other questions. Sorry.
Yes. If that material is something called scrim,
yes,
which is a fabric that will degrade
yes.
over time due to the elements, due to the sun. Are there any provisions for guaranteeing a certain quality of that screening over time?
Yes. And first, if this passes the way it is written, that this particular case would come forward through a quasi-judicial conditional use hearing. So Mayor Pro Tem Smith is absolutely correct. We shouldn't talk about specifics regarding this, but as far as applying the standards, we can add conditions that would speak to the maintenance of the fabric so that at a certain period of time it is replaced and maintained through its lifetime. So yes, we can put conditions and be able to review what is expected for the life of these products based on our sun intensities.
All right.
And I guess maybe one comment I would make related to that, I mean, to me, that becomes a code enforcement issue. And, you know, I don't see why we would have to necessarily, in any case, in my opinion, try to add conditions to try to identify that. I mean, to me, that's a code enforcement item. But, Carol?
Did you discuss shrubbery or trees as a barrier? Is that?
That could be possible depending upon the density, but it would have to meet that requirement of semi-opaque.
Okay, so that's the key.
Yep.
Keyword. Okay.
I think the key thing for the whole amendment is that it's conditional. That gives us all the flexibility we need depending on the particular application and where it is in the city. So I really agree with that, because we have a lot of flexibility and control over how a project, not necessarily this project, but any project in the future, is going to be looked upon by the neighbors.
That's right.
Other questions of staff before we go to the public hearing? Gary, sorry.
What's the process of determining suitability of screening material? I mean, who makes those decisions? I assume Planning Commission, I guess, to some degree.
Yes.
But what criteria do they use?
Well, we're going to see if it is compatible with the surrounding area, that it's at least semi-opaque, and so you will do your best judgment to determine that it is suitable.
I'm looking from the standpoint of somebody who wants to do it. They have to find out, well, what does everybody consider suitable?
Mm-hmm.
So they can go.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And they'll give us some ideas, and they'll bounce them off us, and then we'll say yay or nay.
Any other questions of staff before we open the hearing? Thank you, Sally.
Thank you.
With that, we'll open the public comment period on this item. I've got two folks signed up under 9A, so we'll go through that, and then we'll open it up from there. So first on the list is Mr. John DeVoe. As you're coming up, John, I know you know the routine. Please state your name and address for the record.
John DeVoe, 940 East Kelly Ave Road, Woodland Park. I come to talk to you a little bit as chairman of the Planning Commission, and why we came to the conclusion of what we're doing, or why we voted the way we did, and it was a 5-2 vote to pass what Sally presented. During the deliberation of this, there was a recommendation to change this to permitted use, and I think that was also a desire of the applicant. And after we thoroughly discussed that, we came to the conclusion we didn't want to do that. In service commercial, it's not only that piece of property, but it's the entire section of property of where our old, where the Saddle Club is. It used to be the lagoon and that down there. And in making that permitted use, that means that a big box retail, a Lowe's, a Home Depot could come in there, and it would never go through the public process, which means the council would never hear it. It means there'd never be a public hearing. And that would simply be something done by the planning department. Now, they have to inform everybody, send them a set of plans and that. But the call to have a public hearing is from the applicant if they decide to want to do some changes that requires that. So we didn't think, and this is part of this, my own personal opinion, is that we're really disfranchising the voters, and we're disfranchising the council if projects like that all of a sudden are you have no input. There's no oversight for that for any kind of changes or observation. That was really important during Walmart, and that was a lengthy debate. And sometimes it wasn't very much fun, but we got through it, and we got all the public's input. And I think when you're an elected official, as a lot of us had to stand up there and do that, and I think, Ken, you were involved with that.
Absolutely.
I think you have to give the public, the people that voted, of this town a chance to comment on that. If you go to permitted use, that goes away. And that was the reason that we went the route that we did, to try to leave that as conditional use. And you alluded to that earlier, to do that. And that's pretty much all I really had. It's in your hands what you want to do with that. But if that changes, and if you would change that to permitted use tonight, all these things that have been requested, that a lot came out of the planning committee, no longer has to take place. They'll simply be worked out with planning department. They're very capable of doing that. But I just like the oversight, especially when you folks are elected by the citizens of this community, to put their best interests forward, as well as as a developer that comes in our community.
Thank you, John.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, the second person signed up tonight is Mr. Ray Hicks. Mr. Hicks, would you please state your name and address for the record?
Yeah, so I'm Ray Hicks. My address is 805 Treon Avenue. That's in Daphne, Alabama. Long way from home tonight. I'm just here to answer questions. I certainly, Sally's office, and had very good interaction and positive interaction so far. Certainly appreciate that the city is opening themselves to future interpretations of what you do tonight. And but for what we're here for, I want to open myself to any questions that you may have, because I'm here tonight, and I'm the guy behind the company that's doing the Tractor Supply. We're excited to be here and hope that the city's excited to have our project coming.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Questions?
Welcome to Woodland Park, and your confidence in our city and as a business environment, and we certainly hope to be able to work with you to make this all happen. But the question is, how did you find us?
Well, I guess maybe what I would say is, I guess if you want to take a moment to answer that, but maybe we try to, that's kind of a market question. Are there questions that are...
Alabama color.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you real quickly, and I'm a national developer for Tractor Supply Company. I have markets from Southern California to Montana to Southern Florida, and I hitched onto the wagon of a fast-growing company about 7 years ago, concurrent to the time that I had started my young development company. Turned out to be the right fork in the road to choose, and they identified this as a potential market to come look at. It's close to a lot of areas that I find very appealing in my personal life, just to the west of here, and I said, I'm on this one. So came out here in short order and found a great spot, had a local real estate guy out of Denver that helped me find this piece of property, which I understand has an interesting past and been sitting there for some time. We found ourselves in the fortunate position to find a piece of real estate here that was suitable for our type development. That's how we ended up here. I wish that it was more miraculous than that, but I just said that looks like the kind of place I want to be. So,
how many employees would you expect to have?
20 employees. Company's known for providing benefit packages that are in excess of what you see traditionally in retail environment. It's been a very low turnover rate with their employees. And I encourage each of you to maybe do a little bit of research into the company online. Though I'm an outside vendor for them, I work closely with them every single day. Their corporate culture and the way that they treat everyone is something that we should all strive to do generally. They try to do the right thing by their people.
Would these all be full-time employees?
If I could, please. The issue before us tonight isn't about this gentleman's application to bring Tractor Supply Company here. It's the fact that he's wanting to bring it here that has caused us to realize that there's something in our code that needs to be modified. If this moves forward in a conditional use permit process, as Sally mentioned, it will move into quasi-judicial, and we don't want to get ourselves into trouble in ex parte communication prematurely. I know Ray would love to tell you the rest of the story. We're going to ask him to hold on to that. So what's before you tonight is to think about the code amendment that was precipitated by their project. It's not necessarily associated with their project.
And I think to that end, what I would suggest is if there are specific questions that you think Mr. Hicks could help us answer or help us think through as it relates to this code amendment, I would, since he is the gentleman that brought it up to the city, I think it's appropriate we can ask him some of those questions. But I would like to stay out of the specifics of the actual project because as it's proposed tonight, this would go to become quasi-judicial, and I don't want to go too far.
Well, thank you for reminding me.
Yes, sir.
No worries.
Well, I only have one question, and I think that's relevant then, is as you have opened these outlets in other communities, did you think that a conditional use for the design standards was a hindrance, or in other communities, have they used a conditional use design standard?
It varies. And for example, in Castle Rock, we had a conditional use, and we work closely with the planning departments from the onset. Our organization does, and so we don't find it to be a hindrance. We're set up to understand the needs of each community that we go into. We're so varied geographically where we go. There are different community standards in different parts of the country, but we found that you meet those standards or you don't do business in those communities. And that's our projects are, they fall under the size of some of these larger box stores that you mentioned that create they have very big implications when they come into your communities. But the standards that we establish when we come in are often, those guys can benefit from them. And so we appreciate that, an ounce of caution might be in something that we work with, and we're prepared to do so.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Hicks? No? All right, thank you. Thanks for coming this evening. It's not a short drive.
If I could, before you call the next person up, this is, for lack of a better term, this is almost a house cleaning and bringing up to date our code. And it was Mr. Hicks who caused us to see that we had a dirty floor. So we're, again, not evaluating the dirty floor. We're evaluating how we can fix that.
All right. I don't have anyone else signed up under this item. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward and discuss this issue this evening? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period and bring the discussion up to council. Is there additional discussion from council?
No, I appreciate the Planning Commission's approach to this issue, and I'm glad that we do have the opportunity to kind of clean house, and the flexibility of conditional use I think is appropriate. Thank you, John.
And and I'll just throw this out, and I threw it out at the last meeting, and I I understand where John's coming from and the Planning Commission. To me, I always balance as I think about these items, and I think about what's permitted, what's conditional, what's appropriate that should go through staff level versus making folks jump through hoops. I'm very pro-business. You guys know that. Not saying that you guys are not. I'm sure you are. But I'm very pro-business, and I always think about it from a business perspective, and I think about how we look to outside folks coming into Woodland Park. And I like to see fewer hoops than more hoops and more government. One of the things that makes me more comfortable with considering this maybe not as a conditional but a permitted use under service commercial is when you look at all the commercial ranges we have, service commercial is the heavy service, the heavy commercial area that we have in our community. And if this type of use with outdoor storage is not permitted in that, then should it be permitted anywhere, type thing. So to me, when you have service commercial, that's the area that this type of activity could take place. The second thing I would note is that what Sally prepared with the two design standards really gives the staff the tools that they need to make sure that if somebody comes forward with whatever it is and they want to do outside storage, the design standards are there. It has to have a fence. It has to be opaque. And I just, as I sit here and I think about the next applicant that might come forward that wants to do this in service commercial, and they come to us, to me, to micromanage, what their fence looks like or if that's opaque enough, we typically don't get into those types of discussions. We see a rendering and we say, wow, that looks really nice. And we rely on staff. So I would be open, if council wants to discuss it further, to maybe step back and say, should we be legislating this on a permitted use or on a conditional use? And if nobody else feels strongly about that, I'm only one person.
Would you suggest, Eric, that permitted use just be in SC?
I think SC as well as heavy service commercial, light industrial. Because I think it's appropriate in light industrial type as well. But I think as it relates to this chart, I think service commercial is the place that I would see that if you're going to do outside storage, that it be permitted. In the central business district, I think conditional is more appropriate because there you have a mix of uses.
I don't recall. What is Walmart? Is that service commercial?
PUD.
PUD. And PUD is still conditional.
Right. It's conditional on the PUD being approved.
Okay.
Right.
Ken, you were around when that process went on.
It was quite a process, as I recall. It was about 17 hours in Planning Commission.
I remember that.
Spent a lot of time talking about the way that building looks today, and I'm really glad we did. And it is good to go through this process and give us the chance to do it. I'll make a quick note about that. At the last meeting in Planning Commission, a person from Walmart, I think, was a little fed up with all the discussion and basically said, this is what we're presenting, take it or leave it. And we said, we're going to leave it. And so we didn't approve it. But when it came back to City Council 2 weeks later, everything we had asked for had been done. So it's good to have that review process. So we have a chance to, that's why you see the wood timbers, the gables, and all that stuff on Walmart. So that's kind of the result of that process.
The one thing I would note about Walmart, though, it is different than this from the standpoint that was a permitted, or a PUD. A PUD absolutely is always going to come to this body. If it's a permitted use, and the only thing that's not permitted about this use would be the outside storage. And so, then they're still going to work with staff for the approvals, and it would never come to us. So if another retail business that met the permitted use guidelines under service commercial, it would just go up. It's like that's not a good example, but anyway. Starbucks is permitted because of the PUD, and so we just get a nice drawing. And, every time I get one of those drawings, I look at it and go, wow, staff really did a nice job. So to me, this is a question of, do we want to give staff some more leniency and make it a little easier for the developers and the folks coming in and the business people, or do we want to have the hoops? Bob, you had a question or a comment?
No, I was wondering if Lowe's would be the next good application of this. If we put it, Lowe's would probably be in a PUD area too, so that would go through the same process. Can you come up with a good example of where SC might apply here in Woodland Park, where that would be a permitted use for SC? Can you tell, the area of the town where it's service commercial?
Well, there's a number of areas that are zoned service commercial. Sally probably can address that better than.
They even have the zoning map.
Wow, you came prepared.
The major service commercial area is down by the Saddle Club property and the former lagoons and the Woodland Village Mobile Home Park. So that's where the next area for service commercial, and the property that we're talking about this evening for Tractor Supply is the other service commercial. And then in the north half of Woodland Park, there's a little pocket of service commercial that has the Tamarack Business Center on it, and I suspect that this property will also develop as service commercial.
Sally, the piece of property beside Safeway, that's county, correct?
Yes.
And right now, I sure wish we had the ability to enforce some design standards there. That's really become an eyesore. Now, I asked Mr. Hicks if this was a hindrance to him, and he stated no. And I think I err on the side of allowing the community and this body to review those requests.
Bob?
But in John's concern was things like Lowe's. And there's a lot of talk of potential future development in that service commercial area. And if we just rezone that to PUD, then that would kind of go away. Whatever developed goes in there would have to meet the same standards or process that we went through with Walmart.
Well, I guess what I would note about PUD is we're never going to rezone something PUD.
Okay.
That is something that's going to come to us because PUD sets their own standards. The reason why you go through a PUD is because you can set your own standards.
Okay.
And all of those standards, setbacks, building heights, all those types of things. So at this point with service commercial, if this became a permitted use, then something like a Lowe's or a big box that wanted to do outside storage would have to meet the design guidelines as set forth, and it would not necessarily trip the need to come through a public process, as long as they meet all of the requirements under service commercial as far as setbacks, building heights, all those types of things.
Well, I appreciate Mr. Hicks's willingness to go with what we're recommending here, but I with you would have utmost confidence in our planning staff to in fact enforce these standards and work to accomplish the same ends that we would hope to have an attractive community, and so I'm inclined to go into allowing it to be a permitted use in the service commercial area. So I'd just like to hear from others too as to how this goes.
Gary?
That still has the scrutiny of the planning division, and the people in the planning department are citizens of Woodland Park, and they represent everybody else. Well, they're not elected, but they come from our citizenry, and why not trust them? Otherwise, what you're saying to me is it doesn't need to really go in our hands to consider the particular conditions that place forth on someone who wants to come in here and have that outside storage, that it would just simply rest with the planning department, and that would be good enough for me, because that's why we have a planning department.
That's really the decision tonight as it relates to this item in my mind.
In other words, it goes through, you're saying that why subject it to an additional sets of scrutiny from the council, when in fact the planning division may be just satisfactory enough, because after all, they're one of us, basically.
Ken?
Well, I guess I would just say again that we're not talking about a large number of parcels throughout the city, but the few on the southeast side are very visible to everybody who comes to our community. And I understand and appreciate what you're saying, Eric, but I really like the idea of putting it through the public process as we've done with other things. And I would still stick to that.
I guess the one comment I would make as it relates to a Lowe's, we'll use that as an example. If for some reason Lowe's decided to come in and not do a garden center, that would be a permitted use. And, so the leverage that we're looking to try to hold up here is saying, you know what, we're going to hold on to this because we think that something like that might have a garden center, and that will give us the leverage to have it come here. I mean, maybe there's a better way to make that happen rather than, this, because if they didn't do a garden center or any outside storage, then it would just be a permitted use, and voila, it would show up.
So we'll go with that system.
Yep. John, do you have anything you want to add before we
Yes.
move on?
I'm not ready to relinquish the authority we have. We may learn from the Tractor Supply Company store that we can do that in the future, and I'm a conservative, and so I would agree with Carol and Ken. We ought to maintain a conditional use for this type of facility now.
All right. Any other discussion? Is there someone that would like to craft a motion?
I would move approval of ordinance number 1193 as presented.
Oh, no, with amendment.
Oh.
Remember Sally added an amendment.
That's right, with the amendment that Sally read into the record.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 1193 as presented. Cindy?
Thank you. Matthews?
Yes.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Smith?
No.
Brevetto?
No.
Carlson?
I'll go with the Planning Commission recommendation, yes.
And Harvey.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-2.
We almost had a 3-3.
But not.
Well, we did. All right, well, thank you. I think that was a great discussion, and I look forward to seeing it progress through the process. So thank you, Mr. Hicks, for coming this evening. All right, moving on to item 9B. This is to consider ordinance number 1194, granting a conditional use permit for Sapphire Properties LLC to change existing commercial use to single-family use at 404 North State Highway 67. And before we begin this, I just want to remind council this is quasi-judicial, and as such, our electronic devices, including our iPads and cell phones and those types of things, need to be used for reading the material that was presented to us, but not doing any type of texting or receiving messages. So thank you. And for that, for our staff presentation, we're going to turn to Ms. Parnell.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And good evening, Council. Tonight I'm coming with further details regarding the conditional use permit request for the owners, Sapphire Properties LLC. And this is to change back an existing use of business in a community commercial zone back to a residential use that was pre-existing. And our applicant is here. Mr. Normstein is here to answer any questions that you might have with regard to this after my presentation. And Planning Commission did hear this particular case on the 22nd of August, and they recommended unanimously approval at that time. Start off by giving you a little background. The house that was on that first slide here was built in 1941. And in 1969, the zoning ordinance was implemented. And with that initial zoning map, you'll see circled in red here is the property at hand. And it was zoned at that time R1, which is compatible to a residential single-family use zone. And then in 1974, we found a preliminary plat that showed this area to the west. It was regarding this area, but it showed this as C1. So somewhere which is compatible to community commercial for retail and office space. And so somewhere between 1969 and 1974, this changed to a commercial zone. In 2004, our applicant purchased this property. Sapphire Properties LLC purchased this property in 2004, and it was converted to commercial at that time from its residential use. And then just last year, they added improvements to the parking lot. And so there was repaving and drainage things that were looked at that time. This is a zoning map of this area, and as you'll see circled in the middle here, 404 North Highway 67. property at hand, zoned in the fuchsia color, community commercial, again used for office, business, low impact retail. Also listed on this are the two of the area businesses. More recently, we have Community Cupboard that just moved into this area, and then to the south we have Baja Broadband, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. But you'll notice that surrounding to the east we have urban residential, and then to the west we have suburban residential properties. This here is a picture of a site plan for the applicant. And the things that I want to point out on this is Highway 67, of course. There is an extensive parking lot, as I mentioned before. And in that parking lot, there is handicap accessible parking that was improved with the parking lot in 2012. And there also is an existing ramp, and those will actually remain, so that it'll make it capable for anyone that may have handicap needs for those that access to that property. Now, when we look at a conditional use permit, we take and analyze it to section 18.57, and there are 11 criteria for which we analyze a conditional use permit. I'm going to briefly go over each one and how we came to analyze each of those areas. The first one is that the proposed use shall have a demonstrated direct need to be located at this location and provide any adequate mitigation measures if there need to be some impacts that need to be mitigated. And we found this to comply. The first biggest reason is that right now here in Woodland Park we're in need of rental and leasable property and living spaces in high demand. And so it's something that would be a great fit for Woodland Park right now. Also, having that historical single-family residential use. In fact, I included a picture of a swing here because that swing is still in the backyard. So it kind of reminds you that this was at one time a residential single-family use. Also, community commercial is a lower impact zone. And also we have the urban residential to the east, and then we have the suburban residential zone to the west. So it does fit in nicely with that. And it can be easily remodeled for that use, going back to that use. Criteria number 2 is that the use shall not endanger public health and welfare, and it's a single-family home, so it's a low-impact use. Criteria number 3 is that the use shall not substantially injure the value of properties. And again, we have that to the west and the east, the single-family residential, so it will fit in there nicely. And it is in harmony with the neighborhood of sorts because of the residential uses to the east and west as well. Criteria number 5 talks about the use conforming to provisions, objectives, and policies of all city plans. And if you take the comprehensive future plan map, it shows the continued single-family use on both the east and the west side. So therefore, it would fit nicely in the future as well. And all the city relevant departments of utilities, engineering, and economic development have looked at this conditional use permit and found no issues with it. The criteria number 6 is very similar to this, though it talks to meeting city regulations, those meaning zoning, subdivisions, utilities, and again, construction regulations as well. And this remodel will also conform to Teller County Building and Fire Code, as well as all the city departments, again, have reviewed. Criteria number 7 talks to the use being constructed and maintained to accommodate local on-site and off-site traffic. And with a single-family use, we average it to 10 vehicle trips per day, which is significantly less than the 100 that you would need to justify a more extensive traffic study. It also has ample private parking, so it can accommodate not only the person that rents it, but if they had a couple of visitors that came to visit them. There was one thing that came out of our review, was shipped to CDOT to review as well, because it's right there adjacent to Highway 67, and apparently in the past it has not had an access permit. And so CDOT just asked that that application take place so that they could approve it and update it in their records. They're actually going to waive the fees that are involved with that as well. They just really want to have it on record. And that's been added as a condition at the end as well. And our applicant has already submitted his application for that through our office to CDOT on the 23rd of August. Criteria number 8 talks about the use being designed, constructed, and maintained with regard to the topography, surface drainage, soil potentials, natural and man-made hazards, and streams and environmental significant features. And there are no topography challenges to this particular property. And actually, when it went through the parking lot zoning development permit in 2012, a lot of the drainage and other surface drainage and other things were looked at that time and mitigated. You can actually see there's a picture here of the drainage along the north side there. Criteria number 9 talks about how the use shall be designed, constructed, and maintained with regard to water supply, wastewater disposal, solid waste disposal, air quality, and surface water drainage. And there again are no issues with sewer, water, wastewater. Utilities director has looked at that. Air quality effects for a single-family home are very minimal, and the property surface drainage and other issues were addressed during that ZDP in 2012 and mitigated as part of that. Criteria number 10 talks about the use being designed, constructed, and maintained to not unduly increase the public danger with regard to fire, explosion, other safety hazards, and it complies. The remodel, again, will comply with international fire code as well as building code. Number 11 talks about the use may be required to provide architectural design schemas and may be required to have amenities, not limited to fencing, landscaping, those types of buffer areas and aesthetic enhancement measures. And there are no planned exterior changes to this particular property. There's a picture here of the backyard. This backyard is actually fully fenced, and that allows it to buffer from any noise from Highway 67 or any of the commercial properties to the north and the south. And the comprehensive plan, one of the principles of that is to strengthen the spectrum of the city's housing stock. And this is a time where we could definitely use another type of leasable living space, rental living space. So we find that it meets all 11 criteria. We do have one condition that needs to be met prior to certificate of occupancy approval in conjunction with that zoning development permit. And that is just that we not only have we applied for that CDOT access permit, but we'd like to see that approval before we permit approval that. So we recommend approval. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Is this restricted to single family, or can it be multifamily? In other words,
it's just single family.
Okay,
yes.
So no more than 5 unrelated people can occupy this premises. Then?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any
that's
particular
just
reason
really
why?
Excuse me. Say that again.
Is that what the intent of the owner is, that he would rent this out as a single family?
Yes, the intent is to either rent or lease as living space, single family residential. I doubt that this isn't really that big of a property. I think that you would have 5 unrelated in here. And I do want to clarify that it is not a multifamily use that we're looking for here. It's a single family use. Just a use. It's still going to be zoned community commercial.
Carol?
Criteria number 9, it's currently on a commercial tap.
That's a good question. The tap size, I think, would be the issue at hand, not commercial or residential. or single family. 3/4 inch commercial tap's the same thing as a 3/4 inch residential tap.
And it's currently on city water and
Yes, ma'am.
city sewer. Okay. So that's redesignating this as a single family home really has no impact on that. Okay.
No, ma'am.
Other questions? All right. Seeing no other questions, we'll invite Norm Steen to the applicant.
Norm, I'll take those for you. Thank you. I know you understand process.
And I guess just for the record, we'll go ahead and consider this opening of the public comment period and for this item. Thank you. Norm, please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Council and City staff. My name is Norm Steen. I'm the General Manager of Sapphire Properties, LLC, and here representing that property alone. And we're the role. My wife and I purchased this property in 2004. We used it as a commercial use for about 6 years. It was, as indicated, it was built in 1941, so its primary use, or majority of its history, has been residential. It served its purpose well in commercial use. We used it as a location for our customer service office. The business I ran for about 18 years. It was our final location for that business. In 2011, we began to downscale that business. Eventually sold all franchises of that business, and now that building is vacant. It has been vacant for just under 3 years. So cash flow is something we're all interested in, and so it's pretty clear that residential use has a much higher likelihood of being filled than commercial. So our intent is to remove the place where all the file cabinets existed, replace that with kitchen countertops. We're going to retain the indoor ADA-equipped bathroom. Going to reinstall a bathtub and shower. Going to install a dishwasher and a stove. So it'll be a nice single-family, 3-bedroom home. It's on a 1/3 of an acre, fully fenced lot, beautiful paved parking lot, and I think it'll be one of the nicer homes in the area. We hope that I urge you to approve the conditional use. And really answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant?
I'm assuming he can have chickens there.
Okay.
Depends what the HOA says, I guess.
I hadn't thought about that.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Norm.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period and bring it up to council. Any discussion from council, or is there a motion?
I think a motion to approve ordinance 1194 is amended.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Oh,
Is there an amendment to the ordinance?
She said the other condition, CDOT.
Oh, it was listed in. It's in the.
Okay, then just move to approve 1194.
as presented.
As presented, yeah.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Cindy?
Thank you. Schaefer?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Brevetto?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Harvey?
Yes.
Matthews?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
All right. Moving on to item 10, new business. We have one item under new business, and that is to review a request from Megan Rosales with regard to having alcohol in Memorial Park for an event on Saturday, September 28th. Cindy.
Thank you. Included in the city's municipal code in the section for parks and recreation is the language that provides it's unlawful for anybody to have alcohol in the park, except by special permit issued by and at the discretion of the city council, and then obviously within the current regulations and laws of the state of Colorado regarding liquor. An example, this doesn't happen very often. I can't recall the last time we did it, but I can think back to the olden days before we really had Meadowwood Park, and there were fundraising events held out there, and some of the adult softball, women's, co-ed, men would have fundraisers out there where they would come to the city council to request permission to do that as a fundraiser for improvements to the park. The thing that makes this request a little bit different is that it's a private party. It's not, it's a celebration for a small group of people. It's not a public event like a special event permit like Vino and Notes or perhaps the Oktoberfest. This is a request that's smaller, very contained, and is kind of interesting. This group, High Noon Entertainment, was actually in our community doing some filming for the Weather Channel show called Prospectors. And one of their patrons, I think, lives down in the service commercial area or behind it by the Safeway. And they were actually doing some filming for this show and became enamored with our beautiful surroundings and wants to request that they be allowed to host a wedding reception for one of their cast members on the 28th. Specifics include 30 to 40 guests, barbecue, a small grassroots band, and a half a keg of beer. The filming will end at 8 p.m. They will do the cleanup. You see in your packet the information for how and where the food and the beer will be served. They will contain the area where the people are so that it's not open to the public, nor is it accessible to the public. The property was posted by law. As you know, we do that for any kind of alcoholic event that is not on a licensed premise. So the request is for your permission, for us to give them permission to do this. And what I do when that happens is give them a letter on the city clerk letterhead that gives them permission to have that event from 3 to 8 with a keg of beer. Will assign an additional staff person to monitor the keg, and so they understand that the public is not invited. It's just a private party. What questions may I answer?
In my role with the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, I know in the master plan for Memorial Park, there's envisioned like a wedding venue, one of the shelters or whatever. So I suspect that we will probably get more requests for private events in the future. And so I think this is a good precedent. It'll be hopefully on national television.
It's hard to beat that view.
Any other questions, comments, motion?
Move to approve the request for High Noon Entertainment to have alcohol in Memorial Park for an event on Saturday, September 28th, 2013.
Second.
All right. We have a motion, second, and a third. Cindy?
Thank you. Smith?
Yes.
Brevetto?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Harvey?
Yes.
Matthews?
Yes.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, moving on to item number 11, public comment on items not on the agenda. Is there anyone who has anything? I don't have anyone signed up. Debbie's not here. So. All right, well, that's a good segue into reports. The mayor's report. So I have a few items here. So I'd like to point out on the wall there behind Bill, between Bill and Kip, I guess depending upon where you're sitting, the artwork for, how often does that change?
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. So every fortnight. And that artwork is courtesy of Brittany Stebbins. She is a senior at the high school. So, looks very nice. Wonderful. Thank you. Your next career. I have a few other items for the upcoming couple weeks here. The first item are Friday, September the 20th and 27th, the 23rd Annual Farmers Market from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m., located at Henrietta and Center. The second item is the big item that we do this time of year, every year, and it's Oktoberfest. It's this Saturday and Sunday, September 21st and 22nd, 16th annual, and it's right adjacent and within the Ute Pass Cultural Center. I guess the mayor's going to be there to tap the keg.
Correct.
So he didn't come to this, but he goes to that. So that leaves us to wonder. And the last item is Thursday, October 3rd, the Chamber's Lunch and Learn, brain training, the difference between males and females. I didn't know there was a difference. Contact the Chamber if you have any questions. So I guess I should go to that. My wife, I think, signed me up. That's all I have. Council reports? Gary? Nothing? Bob?
Yes. On the 3rd of October agenda, we're going to have an item for the Woodland Aquatic Project. We'll recall last time, I think we talked about it, was the 20th of September, where we were basically told to raise the funds privately to do the business plan. That, of course, took a little effort. Holiday Home Tour and Creek Victor Mining Company provided the funds, and we had to get the 501c3 where they could then send us the money. And so then we had the business plan developed, and then, of course, we were missing one council member, and so it's been a lengthy process to find the right time to do it. And so we're going to give an opportunity for council to reconsider this matter one more time in the form of a resolution, just to give guidance as to way forward. So you'll be getting that once the lawyer has approved of all the language of it and that sort of thing. So just want to give everybody a heads up that this will be on the 3rd of October agenda. So please be here.
All right. Thank you. Carol?
Cindy Morse and I did attend the CML district meeting last Monday in Fountain. Can't say that there were any showstoppers or really big issues to discuss this year for this community, probably the state at large. But I invite everyone to go to the CML website and look at those issues that are coming up in the legislature in the very near future, and appreciate Fountain hosting this one. How was dinner?
It was good. And they had all the race cars lined up. We ate at the media room facing
Pikes
the
Peak
Speedway at the International
Raceway.
Cool.
Nice. Ken?
That's all.
Nothing. John?
I'd like to remind the council that we're going to have a joint work session with the Planning Commission a week from tonight, 7 o'clock. Please be here. Subject, accessory dwelling units.
All right, and I guess I would just add one more thing. I mean, obviously the events of the last week or so have been tremendous in Colorado, to say the least. I know that there are a lot of efforts. Thankfully, Woodland Park, for the most part, we had our event 2 weeks before that, but we didn't have any of the devastation that occurred. And, some of those, what has to be overcome is significant. And I heard, we always throw around 100-year floods. It's kind of interesting, talking about the FEMA stuff tonight. And I've heard, people saying it was a 1,000-year flood in Boulder. So, when the national media is calling it biblical proportions, or epic, I mean, they were not kidding. So I know people, and I'm sure we all do, that have been affected by that. And we continue to have our own flooding issues as it relates to Manitou and the pass. And I get asked a lot about that, as I'm sure we all do. And obviously our thoughts and prayers and go out to all those folks involved, and I know everyone shares the same sentiment. So I just thought I'd be remiss without making some comment towards that. So that's the mayor and the council. City attorney is not here, so we're saving money.
Eric,
Go ahead.
I did want to mention one more thing now that we're talking about traumatic events, disasters. The NAVC shooting last week at the Washington Navy Yard. I used to work in the building next to it before moving here, and certainly I was very concerned about my friends and those. So I was looking at the names very carefully. But even though my friends were on the list, I think while we're reflecting on disasters like this, I think that we need to keep in mind that one too, although it's a little bit away from us. So, thank you.
All right, moving on. David, city manager's report.
Sally was going to announce the joint work session. Councilman Schaefer, thank you for doing that. There was one item on the events list that should be added, and that's the Third Friday Art Walk is tomorrow night as well. So I apologize for that not being on there. A quick update on City Hall. The asbestos has been abated. The areas opened up. We have access there. We've not relocated anyone back into those areas because we still have the restoration to do. We've picked colors of carpets and paint, and that was just so much fun. And we've also got some of the new windows installed, so we're making good progress with that. We think that those areas will be back open for use in 2 to 3 weeks, so we're making progress with that. But to date, I still think we're serving our citizens well. I've not heard any concerns. Other than one gentleman, I think, walked around the building several times because he had difficulty understanding some of the directions, but we found him before he turned into butter, and we got him taken care of.
Was that you?
It was not me. It was not me.
I thought.
No, it wasn't you.
Because I was there one day going around about 3. So how do I get?
Normal.
So that's all we have.
I have a comment.
Sure.
We're doing a beautiful job of the downstairs, okay? Can we consider maybe doing the upstairs too, so we have both floors looking nice? Is that something? I mean, we heard from the school district that we should they're giving us a heads up of something that we might want to consider during the budgetary screening process. And I think that I've been known to call the building ugly. Okay, so I want to be able to rectify that situation if possible.
I suspect the short answer is, of course, you could direct us through the budgetary process to allocate funds to do that. Frankly, I don't know that I would recommend it at this time. We're taking advantage of a lemon that was thrown our way. So we were going to be doing the restoration downstairs, so we're taking advantage of that. The vast majority of the work that's going to be done downstairs is covered by insurance. Right. The windows are not, and that's what kind of price tag? $13,000. And so if we replicated that upstairs and replaced carpet and all that, it would probably be a $50,000 price tag, maybe $40,000. I'm not sure. Let me just take that under advisement and perhaps see what that might cost. Point taken.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion this evening? Seeing none, we'll close the